Praise a higher family. He is the most high, holy, and eternal, King of all kings, the only true wise and living God, the Almighty. So I'm just going to wait a few moments to see whether any of our Instagram people are going to join. I did put a notification out on Instagram to let them know we were going live. So we'll just give them a minute or so to also join. Okay, so just wanted to come on today, really for several things, really. One, to say Happy Gregorian and New Year. For those of us who are still commemorating the secular festivals, Winter Festival of Christmas. So, of course, for us as the Asherites, it's not the end of the year just yet for us. So we still do have another month to go, really. And of course, we've got Purim as well to get through before we get to that. So another Christmas-style festival for us. Another time of celebration and feasting over 3 days. We commemorate Purim. So that to look forward to. So if you want clarification on the dates, then do go onto our website and check out the dates there. Prayers of the Breach online is the URL for our website. And if you go to a page from the menu called Yahuwah's Feasts, you'll see the dates published there, both for the New Year and also for Purim, which I think off the top of my head is from sunset the 1st to about the 4th of February of this year, which is the 13th to the 15th of Adar. So anyway, coming on today also to provide a bit of an intro and a bit of a testimony also. You'll be aware that I haven't really formally put my name really out so much, really, around content I put out on this channel. And I did put out a video previously introducing myself, giving my name as well, and explaining my reasons really for doing that. I'm coming on, though, now to do so, as I'm aware that many of you have actually been following along with various things that have been going on really around my personal life as well. And I'd like to thank those of you who have prayed good prayers for me. I am very appreciative of that. And thank you for that. And please do continue to pray for me also. But the good prayers. So many of you are aware of a number of the things that have been going on in my personal circumstances. I haven't really put too much around them out there, partly because it was still an ongoing matter. And however, the Yahuwah is actually motivating me to do more really around the actual video, the actual ministry as well, and my content creation for this channel. So I've been a little bit hampered with that as well because of just a number of commitments as well, and also trying to work around all of this as well as the general spiritual warfare you'll be aware has been going on as well. So my name, as I've said before, is Anne Samuels. I'm coming on to put my name firmly out there because I'm being made to understand that my quietness, or what's being perceived as my quietness, is being taken or perceived as permission. And my kindness, apparently, has been taken for weakness. Yes, they clearly don't know me terribly well. um, but I understand that there have been a number of things going on spiritually, materially, around people assuming aspects of my identity to either claim or benefits or to garner things or to redirect things that were my property as well. So there have been some fraud, was spiritually as well also involved. And many are perhaps not aware of who the true Anne Samuels actually is. So I'm coming to put my face out here in a name to a face. So you'll be aware if you see someone who's not, or doesn't look like me, that they're not me. So please do be vigilant, because there have been a number of scammers and people misappropriating, some cases, things that are my actual possession as well. But, well, they can't prevail because, yeah, as I say, I serve the Lord Christ. So all that pertains to me is ultimately sanctified to him. So if they want to kind of mess with anything that pertains to my life, then they are really, well, on a collision course with the God of heaven around that. So, but anyway, I just come on to say that to ask everyone to be vigilant and to be aware that there are many people out there misrepresenting my name, utilizing my name for things I would never even associate with myself, or things I would never do, and they're utilizing that to gain currency or to gain credibility, or at least they have been to date. So as I say, you'll be aware of a number of things that have been going on in the background, really, in my personal life. And I'll have to elaborate and provide more information, really, around some of the things that have been going on. And a lot of these things actually began, or really since I was really born, I have to say, because I've come to understand or come to experience and see that we do live in a tabernacle system of government, the earth system, the beast system, essentially a tabernacle system, as we have come to understand. And this is a system that, as we said, pertains to stargazers, people who, well, they study the stars, but not altogether study just the physical stars. They're also looking into the destinies as well of individuals in many cases, because we explained this in the series we did, the teaching we did on the star trade in destiny, to understand that, well, everyone really has almost a space of heaven over their head, and also has a star. So, for instance, we saw the star of Yeshua in his actual birth, the legend around his birth. And this is the case for everyone living, essentially. And it's because many have really accused me of telling my dreams, aspirations to family or to other people. And that's not at all the case. I mean, I would never do that. I was also, as a child, taught the actual story of Joseph in the Bible to see that it was his telling his siblings about his dreams that led to him being sold into slavery and all the hardships he incurred in Egypt. So I would never do that. But it's important to understand, and I do come on really as a cautionary tale to tell others that living as we do in a beast system, it's not uncommon for people, particularly even in a workplace, if they're curious about you, or maybe even just a standard, companies generally can do divination really on their staff or on other people within the actual company. That's not an uncommon thing at all. It may sound like a wild thing for me to say, but we live in a current time where, unfortunately, there used to be more fear really around people dabbling in these sorts of things. But particularly towards the end of the last era, I mean, I'm not even quite sure how the kingdom of darkness wasn't aware that the way they were going was unsustainable, because it was really getting to the point where they were trying to put out all the stops, I think, and just dredge hell up into the earth with the number of things that they were actually doing. To the extent that even the church that I was affiliated to at that time were, well, towards the end of the year, they were always aware that sometimes people on that side have quotas around certain things they must do. So they'd actually begin praying for their own personal safety and protection to pass it into the new year around that time, because of the heightened activity that usually is associated for that kingdom around that sort of time frame. But as we've discussed, Yahuwah really has very much imposed a correction and an intervention in our world presently around all of this. And it's actually transitioned the kingdom back to Israel and back to himself at this time. So this is the reason for various things that transpired in 2020, because Yahuwah was actually bringing an end to old orders and systems of governance and rule in order to institute a new system. However, that system didn't understand. So they tried to reinitialize all the old covenants to the old no gods, to the old no god systems. So now they've thoroughly mired themselves in an insupportable system. But anyway, so that's probably a separate issue that is not so much of interest to me. But I do mention, as you see, the tabernacle systems. I have no qualms of outing and mentioning the tabernacle systems. Why? Because they have targeted, essentially, and pursued, I'm not even sure what words I can even find to describe, really, what I have personally had to experience. Reasons my birth, really. So the usual stargazing, I think, identification in the beginning, and it really just has evolved and escalated from there. And what made it quite good and tolerable, and I think Yahuwah, what was quite good to me in that sense, and did shield me kind of growing up. But I had parents, well, a mother particularly, who was very, very vigilant. She was very, very switched on and on the ball in terms of just being vigilant and protective of me, which did help a lot. But literally from the time I hit the school system, it was on. And the sort of warfare that you're seeing experience now actually started back as early as that, as early as then. I mean, even to the extent that in the school system, when I got to secondary school, they actually demoted me to a just slightly above remedial stream and kept me there for 4 years. So really just every kind of attempt to kind of break down and to yeah. And then they also, so I mean, that's what I could say, because they kind of do stretch to also work within your family network also. By bringing in people within your family is the best way that they think that they can kind of attack and undermine your confidence as much as possible. Is what I think they is part of their attack, their attempt. So there were many incidences, and I say that this really to say to others, but just to be aware really of where you are and of the nature of the country that we are living in. If you're Yisraelite, because we as Yisrael are the blessing. So we have been the blessing to Edom. They are aware of this from the tabernacle construct, and even the Christmas festival, as we have said, is the commemoration of the blessing or the gift that Yisrael has been to Edom or to Western civilizations. Is actually the actual, what you can actually decode from the actual commemoration of that festival and the actual memorialization of St. Nicholas, aka Pope Nicholas V, who is Santa Claus or Father Christmas. So many aren't aware that when they're actually taking their children to see Father Christmas, they're taking them to see a dead pope essentially. But there you are. So why are they doing this? And why have they persecuted and pursued? Well, basically, they pursue the Yisraelite bloodline. So Yisrael, Israel, because essentially the kingdom belongs to us, essentially. Now, Yisrael did, for a time, graft Edom and the Gentiles into the olive vine, as you recall. There's prophecies given in numerous places in the Bible, Romans 11, and chiefly, and also he speaks in the blessing that was given to Judah, about Judah being a lion's whelp, if you recall. He talks about binding the colt into the vine and the ass's colt into the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine and his teeth in the blood of grapes, if you recall. Speaking of binding his colt into the vines, binding Israel is the actual branches of the vine being Christ. And then the ass's colt into the choice vine are the Gentiles, essentially. So the Gentiles, including Edom, are bound in to the actual vine for a period of time as well. But as we say, we've just come through a transitionary shift, which was always verified and guaranteed to transpire in the earth. It's always been timetable to transpire, whereby the kingdom is now translated back to Israel. And whether Edom are ready for that or not, which apparently they're not. And I think they assume that by persecuting Yisrael, and particularly those who are of a royal bloodline, which many of us are, they believe they can somehow turn aside Yahuwah's prophecy. So you have to be very, very vigilant. So in the Magazine series, I've been explaining a little bit around this. And also to define as well that they are also seeking for the 144,000 as well. Now, why, you think, would Edom and the kingdom of darkness be interested in locating 144,000? Well, you've seen what they've been doing to the chosen. So what do you think? So wake up, Israel. So of course we have a protection and a defense in the God of heaven. And this is the reason why I've been really encouraging, really admonishing, advising Israelites to return to the covenant and laws. So far, really, in our Sabbath sessions, we've looked more really at the importance of returning to the law. You see that it's just a basic, reasonable spiritual service or requirement that Israel is required to do at this time. And not so much touched on the issue of the covenant. But why should Israelites return to their covenant? Well, because there's a fundamental difference, really, in even Yahuwah's response to those of his people who acknowledge and return to their covenant and those who do not. Even though they might be quite righteous and they might be under a Christian tradition, there's still a great difference. Now, our enemies, the Gentiles, know this. And so they do, for the most part, do their best to keep us really as far from our covenant and from acknowledging a covenant as possible. And they do that mainly through Christianity. Now, that may sound like quite an explosive or emotive thing for me to say. But what do I mean by that? I'll take one notable example. We looked at the scripture in Zechariah, which is explained about how Israel, once she was driven out of her land, well, essentially became a flock of slaughter. And we looked at how that really did play out after the coming death and resurrection of Yeshua, when Jerusalem was sacked, the temple was destroyed and conquered by Edom, or by Rome, and then all the peoples were driven out of the land. So normally now in modern times of warfare, it's more customary that rather than driving a whole population out of a land, which would be millions of people, you just make them tributary, or you make them a colony, and then administer them by a foreign government actually placed in that land. But Israel, unfortunately, didn't obtain that grace. She was driven totally out of her place. And this was millions of people. So millions of us did flee into Africa, where many of us still reside to this day, many living under different heritages, really. Because it was also foretold that Israel would discontinue from her heritage as well for some days. She'd be without an ephod, without an image. And we should recall the scriptures to actually say that. And we'll come to look at these things again in deeper depth in our Sabbath sessions. But that has been the case. So, as I say, they do look for our people. And part of the reason they do, as well, is to also steal spiritual gifts. So much of what you actually see around in the society around you is actually acquired by forms of spiritual theft. And so I'm just stating it like it is. So another situation that I did actually see was, well, people just being really kind of driven away from round about me. So my regular friends, these people would kind of move in, muscle in, and intimidate to leave because they want to kind of destroy your support system, so you have nowhere to turn to, so they can kind of move in for the kill, that sort of thing. So this is this kind of hunting strategy. I think they do it partly as like some kind of blood sport. It gives some of them, they think it's a kind of a fun thing to do. So that is the nature really of the tabernacle systems. As we said, they merchandise only in the physical commodities we saw in Revelation 18, so the silver, the gold, the fining wood, the cinnamon, sweet odors, and all of the actual physical material goods that we saw. But they do also merchandise in another more dubious trade of both the slaves of men and the souls of men. So slaves formerly being Israel, because we've looked as well to understand that the actual papal laws that mandate that Israel is still slaves, or as slaves, are still in the papal statute books. They haven't been repealed, they're still there. And they have been invoked quite recently to defend and win a case. So we've explained all of these things. So we're just saying this really to be vigilant, to encourage you to be vigilant, because these were things were going on really for many, many years, right around in the presence of my family. I was in my presence of my family, and I'm very pleased or happy that my parents were so vigilant, really, which did actually help to save me from a lot. But nevertheless, I still did go through a lot. So just to really to alert people to be vigilant, really, that when you live in these countries, really, that, as I say, if you're not in a relationship with Christ Jesus, and you're not continually casting down, and you're in a witch because of the initiations and just the sheer climate of the country around you. If you're not careful, you'll find yourself operating in the spirit of witchcraft and not even initially being aware that's what you're doing. I mean, where it should start to become obvious is when you start doing things to be detrimentally or diametrically opposed to God, such as praying for or wishing for the death of other people. But somehow, I think by that time, possibly the actual spirits or whatever have taken too firm hold. I'm not quite sure. So the same many things at once, really, and I will have to come on to clarify more really around some of these things. But I really wanted to come and to thank people who, as I said, who have been good, offering good prayers for me. Has been much appreciated. Also, we have started a series looking also a bit more at the spirit of narcissism, which is a core kind of spirit that is at the root of this. And I think it's quite a nice thing to call it, because all it is straight up demonic possession. It's nothing kind of more glamorous than that. It's just a person who's now totally taken over by another spirit. They become almost like an avatar of themselves, because another spirit has totally seized and taken control completely. And the person you once knew is in there somewhere, but totally suppressed under the actual domination of the spirit, which they're now being led by. So as I say, it's a very dangerous, very insidious spirit that does invade families. They will study your actual family as well. And I guess one of the actual reasons why we say it's even quite important to walk in love, because if you're walking in love, it's in the love of Yahuwah, the love of your neighbor as yourself, so in the commandments, then you're not so easy for that kingdom to manipulate, to actually use you against other people. But if you're not, and you have grievances maybe against other people, you don't like other people for whatever reason, or you see yourself reflected in another person, so that you either don't possess or whatever, then it can be quite easy to be corrupted and be carried away. And that's all that they need really to gain a foothold to initiate you into their agenda. So this did also happen, and also in my family also. But I mean, I say that to say that this is by no means unique to just my family. What you're seeing actually happen with me, well, it's happened probably with most of you already. In many cases, what perhaps makes my situation more unique is because I perhaps made perhaps more of a fuss about it. Because literally, like Paul was saying, that he actually fought with beasts at Ephesus, if you recall. So Paul went to a certain city to preach, and demonic entities met him on the way, and he had to get to a serious prayer to actually subdue and drive them out, to an extent that it's like he was in a wrestling match, he said. He was actually physically wresting almost physical people to the earth to subdue and to get them out. And I can say quite funny, I also had that experience in London. I fought with brute beasts in London quite seriously amidst all of this. So I say that to say it's nothing other than this whole tabernacle system of wickedness, and I will continue to out their evil activities, really, and what they have done, because they have really gone beyond the limit. And what I would say to that system, to the kingdom of darkness, is to get your house in order, because many will surely die over what has been transpired, what has done, because they were told repeatedly as well not to touch. And whenever you has given that instruction, it is a fatal command to disregard it. In every case, the last person he gave that command was Pharaoh, and he ended up washed up dead at the feet of the Israelites on the Jordan side of the Red Sea. Yahuwah said that he will reprove nations for the sake of Israel. He even removed kings for their sake, he said, saying, "Touch not my anointed, and do my prophet no harm." And this word has been given repeatedly to these people. And not just by me. There are many with prophetic ministries who've also given the same word. And they refuse to heed. So here we are. And where they like to think that they are bigger than God. But what I would say to that is that I pity the power of the person who thinks that the kingdom of darkness is something over the God of heaven. And I would say how unwise of them. You literally have to walk past the God of heaven to go down to Satan, because God created Satan. And he also said that there is no power but the power of God. So Satan is really just trying to pervert and dabble and lay his hands on things which they have no right to touch. And this has been no less than what they have sought to do in the case of, like fools rushing in where angels fear to tread. And they literally are putting themselves at risk of an existential time of Esau's visitation over what they are doing, are proposing, are still trying to rise up to do more. They're going to end up burying themselves in it, because they shall not stand or prevail. Isaiah 63 for yourself. And that was a visitation that Yahuwah gave to Mount Seir when Esau was in their first homeland. But they could be suffered to remain there because of the egregious things they continue to do to Israel. And they still, many generations later, are still in the same boat, which is why Yahuwah is now saying, prepare them unto blood. In the prophecies he's given about what is coming back, the second coming to do. So instead, they trampled them in a winepress till his own garments were actually sprinkled with their blood. So the people in Mount Seir saw no such visible sign. They didn't actually see Yahuwah come down to do any such thing at all. But what they did experience was a devastating earthquake. But an earthquake like no other, because it's usually after an earthquake, the earth will go back to normal and will produce and will be fertile again. But this earthquake left the whole area like the offscoring of a rock. Not even a singular blade of grass anywhere would grow anywhere. Totally accursed. Which resulted in them having to be driven out of that land and coming up to the lands in the north, where they are to the present day. That's all I'll say for the present on that. To God be the glory. We are the repairers of the breach, as per Isaiah 58:12. Hashtag, we'll restore his paths. Bye for now.